King Theoden, rising above grief and tragedy. As May drew to an end, I was reflecting on the passing of Bernard Hill, who beautifully portrayed King Theoden, such a great character from Tolkien's world. King Theoden lived a life full of loss and betrayal, and yet he was able to overcome the tumult to achieve a victory. Let us look at this dynamic king who embodied the tenacity of his forefathers. Loss at home. Theoden was raised in Gondor but returned to Rohan upon the death of his grandfather, his father, then Gel, thus ascending the throne. The family was close, and Theoden was understandably devastated when he lost his brother-in-law, and then shortly after his dear sister, Theodwyn. In response to his grief, Theoden took in his young, orphan niece and nephew and raised them as his own. This bond as an adoptive parent lasted until his death during the War of the Ring. The king also lost his wife in childbirth at the delivery of his son, Theodred. Despite his grief, Theoden shouldered his added responsibilities as a single parent. Loss on the battlefield. Later in Theoden's reign, Saruman began open war on the Rohirrim. Orc raids increased, and a military response became necessary. Sadly, the king's only child, Theodred, was killed at the First Battle of Isen, leaving his weary father behind. Betrayal in the capital. During the conflict with Saruman, the king's primary advisor, Grima Wormtongue, poisoned the mind of his lord, in conjunction with Saruman. He gave the king bad advice, even locking up the king's nephew and heir, Eomer. The kingdom was on the verge of collapse as its lord and ruler was under a sort of spell that no mortal man could overcome on his own. Final victory. Help finally came in the form of Gandalf liberating Theoden from the hold of his enemies. Immediately upon his return to sanity, King Theoden led his people against their enemies. Though he arrived too late at the Second Battle of the Isen, he led his men to victory at the Battle of Helm's Deep, thus helping to neutralize the threat of Saruman. Before the wounds of this battle were even healed, he mustered all his available men and rode to the aid of Gondor in its fight with Mordor. Arriving unlooked for, Theoden led his cavalry in one of the most prolific charges in literature, helping to secure victory at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Riding at the front of his host, the good king struck down an enemy chieftain and felled the Black Serpent. As he lay dying under his horse, who had been overthrown by the Witch King, Theoden imparted his final thoughts to his servant, Mary of the Shire, "I go to my fathers. And, even in their mighty company, I shall not now be ashamed. A grim morn, and a glad day, and a golden sunset." Leading by example. The life of Theoden should inspire us to carry our burdens and to help those whose welfare is entrusted to us. Raising your orphan niece and nephew as a widower takes tremendous courage. But to do this with the added burdens of royal responsibility is truly heroic. To recognize that your time has come and that your only task is to ensure that the next generation has an opportunity to live in peace is a chivalric level of self-sacrifice. Theoden truly embodied the ideals of the knights of his household and of his forefathers. May his example lead us to manfully shoulder our crosses as we strive to take care of our families.